Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Donut disturb.
Donut disturb. Disturb you for donuts. All right, so, first of all, I have a new sound dampener called a blanket. Just a blanket that my mom made for me. It's Doctor Who. It has not worked much because Logan was downstairs yelling and I could hear fucking everything with my headphones on. So I've had a couple people mention to me recently about wanting to come on and talk about deconversion. So far it seems to be exclusively Catholics or former Catholics. So I was thinking maybe about having like two co-workers on to talk about deconversion from Catholicism, and maybe having them on at once. So that's one thing that I was thinking about talking about. I know that one of Sarah's friends had mentioned that she might want to come on and talk about deconversion, and she's not Catholic. She is some form of Protestant that I don't know. So
if we get two Catholics, I think that's a critical mass.
Well, I'd be the third. So,
critical mass.
So yeah, so that was something that I was wanting to let you know
because
about.
Be critical of mass. You see how it works. It's a double meaning.
Yes, yeah. And I know that I had I have a coworker who had mentioned that he had hoped that he'd be on the intoxication episode. And then we ended up recording, obviously. I think that had to be between you and me. But that same coworker became a patron. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Alex real quick because he is a $10 patron, which is extra special. And that means we do have to start making more $10 episodes because there has not been, I think there's only been 2 episodes that have had anything specifically for the $10 patrons. So
is that the one we get naked?
Yeah. All right, so subject for this evening. What should we discuss? Do you want me to introduce it since it's my idea?
Yeah. It's always. I don't know what it means until you tell me.
Yeah,
keep it fresh.
I think that my text kept this a little clearer. Anyway, the topic I wanted to talk about was bad faith research, and that being. So I'll give you a couple of examples right off the bat of things that I haven't done myself because I thought that I would be doing them in bad faith. So, I mean, I don't really want to spend that much time doing these things either. But, like, for example, I've had several people tell me that I got to read Atlas Shrugged. And on top of the fact that it's really long and it does not sound particularly good, and I've never heard anybody other than conservatives say it is good. I don't want to read it because I know that, like, if I read it and don't find it good, and then that person wants to talk to me about it, or those people want to talk to me about it, that it will be like, well, you didn't want to like it, you know what I mean? And so, like, I haven't engaged. It's been 10 years that I've been hearing that, at least, that like Atlas Shrugged is what made me a capitalist. Like lots and lots of people have said that to me. And it's kind of like, I don't want to read it. I've heard a good amount about it. It doesn't sound particularly interesting, but also like I love sci-fi and I've read lots of it. And sometimes, yes, when it's good, it can give you like a perspective on like a worldview, but sometimes it's just a story. And so like, John Galt living in the middle of bumfuck in some hidden spot where everybody is trying to hide from. Have you read it?
No, I'm familiar with it.
Citation needed is my big thing where I know the bulk of the story from, but I've read synopses and stuff, and I'm just like, I don't want to commit to a 1,200 page book or whatever. Plus, you know how I read, so like that would take me a year at least. And so I don't want to fucking do it. So
I've seen enough Zack Snyder films. I don't need to read the book.
Yeah. I like Zack Snyder. I mean, I don't.
So it's if you take a Zack Snyder movie, say Watchmen,
yeah,
you take the source material and you map out where they differ, every change he made was to add a libertarian slant to where there wasn't one before.
Yeah.
Like he basically put Ayn Rand slants on things, and that's where he differs. Like, oh, this is just like the comic, except here, that's weird that he does this. Oh, because that's an Ayn Rand libertarian thing, and he had to put it in the story. I mean, the whole idea of Superman letting his father die to keep his secret because he's superior to everyone else, like he shouldn't risk his superior self to save his father.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I can't take. And every time I'm at a Barnes and Noble, I look at it and I go, "Do I want to buy it?" First,
There's movies.
I know.
It was adapted into a series of movies.
I know, but I don't. I feel like that.
But if you don't want to, nobody's telling you. You don't have to.
Right.
You don't have to.
But here's the thing: when I get into that conversation, when I finally go, "Oh, I haven't read it, but I watched it," and then they're like, "Well, what'd you think?" Then they're going to dismiss it as, "Well, you didn't read it. The book was better." And then if I read the book, then it's, and I genuinely am not sure that I could read it in good faith, to be completely honest. Like, I don't know that I could read it and not be, like, if I didn't know anything about it, I could potentially read it and come up with a better conclusion than now that I've heard all these bad things about it. I don't know that I could go pick it up and read it and be like, and not be like, well, this is fucking stupid. This is like, if I ran into a fellow nerd at a bookstore and they were like, oh, you should read that. That's really good. And I had never heard of it, had no context for it, and read it. I think I would be able to, maybe I would go like, not the best thing ever written, but it was, like, I'd have a more honest take.
Read it and enjoy the story and just be like, I mean, it's obviously fiction because that's not how people really interact in real life. Like that wouldn't play out that way in real life. That's fine. Yeah. That that happens in things you read all the time where you don't agree. If it were in the real world, in our world, it wouldn't work out that way. But I still enjoy the story regardless of how it works.
Yeah. So
but it just wouldn't be your favorite because you don't agree with the.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm trying to think of a good example because I do like stuff sometimes that has a different political take from me.
I like most of Zack Snyder's movies. I don't like the fact that he puts that crap in it.
Yeah.
But I still like Man of Steel more than 90% of the country does. I still like Watchmen. I'm just like, I wish he hadn't added that because I think the original version of it was better. Yeah. But I give the movie a B+ and the comic an A.
Yeah.
It didn't become a D.
Right. I think, okay, this is a little bit of a side tangent, so our specialty. I don't know that this is the same thing as research as bad faith researching, but I think something that happens a lot, because you just kind of mentioned it, about not ruining the movies. Like, do you know who Dave Rubin is?
I don't follow his stuff, but I've heard him talked about by other people.
He's the prime example of this, but there's lots and lots of examples that as soon as I say what I'm about to say, you're going to be like, oh, I could think of three.
Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, and Sam Harrison. Yeah, but
people on the left, or who were somewhat on the left, who got tired of political correctness or whatever, and instead of being like, hey, I'm not like them, but I'm still on the left, are like, nope, I am leaving the left because they weren't.
I can make more money on the right.
Well, that's the truth of it.
Or they were never on the left to begin with, but that's where they decided to plant themselves to make money.
Those two things are the true reasoning, but like the reason that they always give is like, well, the left is less tolerant because they called me a bigot for being bigoted.
The place where I want to be bigoted, I'm not allowed to. Right. Therefore, I'll go to the place where all bigotry is.
And I always look at that as like, so for example, you and I, we're pretty well aligned on most stuff. But like, if for example, you all of a sudden were like, I hate trans people. Yeah, trans people is a great example.
I do, man. They always run late, the stupid trains. I mean, I tried Amtrak.
Train people. No. If you hated trans people, I wouldn't go like, well, Matthew hates trans people, but he also is an atheist, so there must be a God. And like, and those, there's a lot of that going on in, and I use Dave Rubin as an example because he did a video for PragerU, Why I Left the Left, and that's almost exactly what that video was like, I disagree with them on this one thing, so therefore I must disagree with them on everything. Oh, I'm a gay man who's going to the side that doesn't believe I should be able to have the children that I'm adopting, or actually surrogate. They were surrogate kids that he had, not adoption. And his audience fucking lost their mind when they found out that him and his husband were going to have kids. And that's the more tolerant side, but we get that a lot we see that a lot in grifters mostly. I genuinely think that it's most of the time grifters, but it's their excuse that they use, and there are those of us that are, I would say, not super politically savvy, normal people, not pundits, not politicians, not people who are in politics, but people who, they have a very baseline understanding of some of the issues, and then they see that and they go, well, that guy's got principles, because he's not just, bending over to every like whim that the radical left comes up with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it's funny because I would say the critique of myself is, I look at those people negatively for that decision they made. However, I look at the opposite, not negatively, but still with confusion of there are some left-wing pundits who were right-wingers at some point in their lives. They talk about at the point where they changed, in their lives. And I used to be a Republican. I used to be conservative. I used to think like that, and I always wonder about, well, why did all of your belief? I get there was something that made you switch.
Yeah.
But how did you switch on every topic? Like if you thought small government was good and a big defense was good and you didn't need a social network, but then you're like, well, I'm not racist though. And I don't, I'm not, homophobic. So I can't be a Republican because they are so focused on that. I can't be that anymore. And now I'm going to change my attitudes on the economy and on the government. I don't understand why they do it, but I don't hold it against them that they do the full.
As somebody, okay, I was never against gay marriage. And that's pretty much, I think, the only right-wing thing that I was never on board with when I was conservative. But for me, it was a long process. Like Sarah and I have been together 13 years next week. And Sarah and I joke that when we first started dating, I had like voted for Obama, but like I was still in the process of becoming a liberal. And I will say that, like, on obviously gay marriage, I've been in favor of since the beginning. So that's never been a shifting point for me.
If I have to suffer, everyone should suffer.
Yeah, most of my gun control thoughts are somewhat the same, because they were never that far right wing, and I would say that I'm like a little, like they're a little more new. They've always been nuanced. They're a little further left nuanced now. But then when you look at the economy, I worked in retail and got treated like shit and paid like shit for years and years and years. And eventually I was like, there's got to be a better way. And
capitalism only works if you're on the top part
of
it.
Well, especially the current version of capitalism, right? Late stage capitalism, I think they call it, which I don't genuinely understand the different versions. I know that capitalism 100 years ago was different.
I think the idea is that if making money is the most important thing, not giving quality, not being bringing people along with you, but increasing your haves, inevitably it leads to collapse, and people feel like we're in the late stage of that inevitable collapse.
Right. And then like, I would say that my understanding of trans issues has opened up. Although, like, to me, as somebody who was always pro gay, it was just a matter of it needed to catch up. Like I caught up while society caught up, I think.
Yeah, it was something that I hadn't really thought about.
Yeah,
but I didn't have a negative thought.
Well, I mean, like I had the experience of running into some trans people a couple times, and I was never mean or cruel, but I know that, like, so I when I was working at Verizon, I helped a trans woman, and she'd come in very big fake tits, like big like tits that were out, and she was in like a motorcycle, like leather or pleather like outfit, like very form fitted, but very clearly a trans woman. And everyone at work, like, I'm helping her, and I can see people in the background laughing at her. And at that point in time, I was more pissed that they were gonna make me laugh to her face, like that they were like or that they were gonna make me embarrassed, or like I was upset about that, which was the wrong thing. And eventually, I came around to the conclusion of like, oh, like no, they were, even whether she knew it or not, they were humiliating her, or they were acting humiliating towards her, and so that is where I say like I've come around to the right side of things, but I didn't know. I was 23 years old, and this was like literally the first person I'd ever encountered that was a trans person, and they weren't just like they were not a woman just trying to look like a woman. They were very much neck down. It was like something you would see in a video game outfit wise, like and that's what I like. That was part of the like, of it, like the shock. But yeah, that was a real side tangent right there.
Yeah, but it was still on the thing of people changing to the side, but to the whole thing, that was all a tangent. Yeah. So when people talk about logical fallacies, and there's a website, your logical fallacy is, and all that stuff. And the real original purpose of logical fallacies, or at least teaching them in the skeptic movement, was around not making the fallacy yourself. It wasn't meant to be a gotcha moment in debates that, aha, you did this fallacy. It was meant to be look at your own thing and make sure you're not using a fallacy in your arguments, right? And so one of the things that when I'm reacting to something someone said online and I want to respond to them, and I go, well, let me go research what I'm going to say before I open my mouth and make sure I don't know what I have, not sitting here talking to you in video, and I have time to look it up. And what I hate is when I find something, I find like, I found 3 things that don't agree with me, that are factual, like good sources, not just I found someone with a different opinion. So maybe my take on it is wrong. And sometimes I wish I was less skeptical and I can just say, well, let me find one that agrees with me and I can quote it, because I don't have it in me to do that. I'm like, oh, yes, maybe I'm wrong. I mean, maybe I'm not wrong. Maybe I just don't know enough to differentiate, but I'm not going to try to make the point I was going to try to make because it doesn't look like reality backs me up.
Right.
So I need to drop out of that.
I think so. The one thing I like about logical fallacies, or not using them, but being aware of them, is I used to get into arguments where I would try to point out what now I know is a logical fallacy and that they have very specific names and terminology, and I wouldn't have the vocabulary to argue that. So as far as I would, we can move on from Ayn Rand, or is it Ayn or Ayn? Ayn.
To best of my knowledge, it's Ayn.
Yeah. I also think, not that, I mean, this is its own logical fallacy, but it's just an interesting thing to me is that she died living on welfare, and
yeah, she lived. Her morals weren't so high that she turned down the social safety net that she said it shouldn't exist.
Yeah. And
like most people who drive on the government-made roads, and they take advantage of that happily. They'll call and complain if a pothole needs to be filled.
Yeah. It reminds me of, so there was this little kid that used to talk out of his ass, and his father helped him with a puzzle, and his father probably did most of the puzzle, and at the end he put the last piece into the puzzle, and then the little boy said, I did it all by myself. And that always reminded me of that mentality of Republicans.
Right. I went the last block, therefore I did it. Yeah. It's the flip side of that here. Tangent story. When we were young, my younger brother had no self-control. Well, no, let me take away the when we were young. My younger brother has very little self-control on foods that he wants to eat, especially junk foods. And he, when we were young, my mother bought a half-gallon ice cream, which back then meant there was a half-gallon of ice cream in the container. Now it's the shape and almost size of what was a half-gallon then, and it's some random amount of ice cream that's not usually a half-gallon. But I would buy a half-gallon of ice cream, and he would eat it 3 times a day. And I would eat some, and Lee would eat some, and Jeremy would eat 3 servings. And Lee and I would each eat a serving, Jeremy would eat. But if Lee or I ate the last serving, even if it was a tablespoon of ice cream, Jeremy would throw a fit that I finished the ice cream, even if he ate 96% of it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Because only the person who took the last drop actually finished it.
Yep.
Same as the last piece of the puzzle, but in reverse. He used it as a blade.
Yeah. So the other thing, the other thing that I had in mind when I mentioned bad faith research or kind of doing the work out of bad faith was the Bible or Quran or the Torah or any of the other religious texts. And have you read? How much have you read of any of them?
Minimal.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an English degree, so I read stuff in class as cornerstones of Western literature refers to this, so you need to read it, kind of things. Read. I once said I'm going to try to read the Jewish scripture. So Jewish scripture is meant to be read a certain portion every day. If you get a Jewish calendar, it has every day what you're supposed to read, and it takes a full year to read it, and it's a holiday at the end called Simchat Torah, which is the commandment of reading the Torah, where you celebrate that you read the last bit, and the next day you start over again and read it for the next year. And I once started to try to do that, and after a couple of days of begats, I was like, "This is stupid." I stopped reading.
Yeah.
But I've read excerpts here and there, and I listen to Bible Peace Theater on Scathing Atheists.
I don't love Bible Peace Theater, and I do think it's hilarious whenever they make reference to the fact that they lose a significant listenership after when it starts. But I don't know. I find it hard to like focus and concentrate on. I did read at least through Exodus when I was like Logan's age, because I was like, I'm going to read the Bible. My mom reads the Bible. I'm going to read the Bible. I don't remember what the hell happened with that, but now like there's a lot of times where I'm like, it would probably be useful to read the Bible. I watch Matt Dillahunty, and I'm like, the way that he can do this. But the other thing is that like when I read, I don't want to be doing a research paper on a 12,000 page book or whatever it is. I don't want to be making notes as like, here's where we go to if they say something about gay people here. And so there's,
well, see, my challenge is to the topic at hand of reading things in bad faith. Oftentimes I will hear quotes like this. Here's this quote from the Bible that says blah, blah, blah. And maybe not as often as not, but fairly often when I go try to look it up on Bible Gateway and I read it in context, I'm like, I don't think this says what the person using it to attack the Bible thinks it says. And I'm not an expert, obviously, but I'll like that's a character in the Bible. Like Jesus didn't say that. That's someone else said that in the story. So maybe it's still meant to be what you're supposed to take away, but someone else in the story said the opposite. So I don't know how you make a strong claim that this is the message you're supposed to get out of it. I've been listening to the Data Over Dogma podcast a lot recently, and I'm following Dan on TikTok and Instagram, and it's interesting because he has read the Bible 475 times. So he'll go into those deep dives on things on when people make biblical claims, pro or con, whatever, well, that's just pro or con, but for a good point or bad from our moral viewpoints, either attacking the Bible or saying the Bible is right. And he'll go through and, sometimes he'll be like, 10-10, no notes, like they got it right. But other times he'll go, no, but if you know the real Hebrew, this is the word that was used, not the word they say was used. And he'll go through it on a level that makes me not want to ever try to quote the Bible as an argument point, because I know I don't know enough about it.
Yeah.
I could only use it disingenuously. I couldn't accurately use it.
Yeah. The one thing,
other than stories like, God sent a she-bear to kill 40 kids. Like that's pretty clear in the story. You can't argue around that one.
Yeah. The one thing that I do with the Bible is when I see something that has a biblical quote, as far as like not the actual quote itself, but you'll see like someone's license plate will be like John 3:16, or you'll see a billboard that says whatever,
the bottom of a cookout cup.
Yeah, I will
citate.
I always look. I will Google them and I'll read the whole which the passages are usually like 2 sentences max, right? It's not, and obviously you're not getting that much context, but a lot of times, especially with like bumper stickers or license plates, I do it. And it's because I'm curious, because I know there's a lot of fucked up shit in the Bible, but there's also a lot of innocuous kind of saying nothing in the Bible too. Like, if somebody has John 3:16 as their, it's like, it's
my favorite one because it's so self-referential bullshit.
Yeah, but I mean,
like it's not any positive message. It's like, oh, Jesus is God's son.
Yeah.
Like that's worth reiterating 100 times.
Yeah.
Like, why is that in a sports game? Go team! God gave His Son to us to murder. Yay!
But it's also like it's fairly inoffensive unless you get really specific into it. But like, God, it's not like
I mean, it's a meaningless kind of thing. It's just about your religion. It's not about morality. Yeah. It's not about a life lesson. It's not a law. It's just
I've never seen one where you're driving behind somebody and their license plate is Leviticus 25. Like, if that
no tattoos.
Isn't 25 the one that 25 is the one that Matt Dillahunty always quotes, I think. I could be getting that wrong. Where it's, if you beat your slave and they get up the next day, they're fine.
48 hours to kill a slave.
Yeah. But.
Yeah, could be.
I think that, like, if you saw that as a lesbian, like, that person's a psycho. I want to stay away from that. Like, And so that's kind of why I do look at a curiosity sometimes. But a lot of times it is such, basic stuff.
Leviticus 25 is not charging interest.
Okay.
According to my quick Google search.
Maybe it's something. It's one of the. I think it's in that area.
It's neither.
Or it could have been. Was it Deuteronomy or was it Leviticus? I think it was Leviticus. I don't know. I have to read the whole book just to figure this out. And I'm like, that's fucking dumb. He created plants before he created light. That doesn't make any fucking sense.
Leviticus 25, 39 to 43. So it's way into 25. Okay. It's not the beginning of 25. That's why.
Yeah. But like, if you saw that, you'd be like, all right, I want to steer clear of that person who's advocating for beating their slaves in North Carolina.
That's like, but they're saying it's, but we're saying not too much. Yeah. Don't beat them all the way till they die. Hold back. Don't kill. What I meant was, it's a good thing. I meant don't kill your slave. That's what I'm saying.
That's a $10 patron exclusive.
There you go.
I saw right before you got on tonight. I saw it was a picture. It was that like kind of realistic looking painting of Trump at the in the Oval Office at the desk with his head down, looking all downtrodden, and Jesus behind him. But they've superimposed. Yeah, they've superimposed the face, so it's no longer Jesus, but it's Charles Manson. But it's so well done, and they said people have been sharing this like crazy, and nobody's realized it's Charles Manson.
It's Charles Manson, Doug Henning,
Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Ewan McGregor. I can't tell the difference.
Yeah, but
there's a guy on TikTok called TikTok Jesus. Who's and I saw a thing there was somebody who was attacking him for being a bad Christian. He's like, I'm an atheist, asexual Jesus imitator. I okay. Where'd you get Christian from?
Yeah. Have I ever told you the story about the Jesus that lived in my hometown?
No, tell me about the story of Jesus who lived in your hometown.
So my sister and I would have been 15 I was 15 or 16. My sister would have been about 13, and we rode our bikes from our house down to McDonald's one day. And we were getting McDonald's, and
was it turning Coca-Cola into wine?
No. And this guy who was fairly similar build to me now, but with not like a long beard, but like, like a little longer than your beard. And he was pure ginger, by the way. Like, because I'm from Massachusetts, so there's a lot of Irish.
Right. How can Jesus not have a soul?
That's a great question, but I hadn't heard that joke before when I was that age. But so he's got red hair, red beard, and it's like, and we get our burgers or nuggets or whatever we're getting, and we go sit down, and the guy's sitting at a table across, and he goes, "Hey guys, how you doing?" And we're like, "Good." And he was like, I'm Jesus. And I was like, "Oh, cool, nice to meet you." Thinking he just was like saying Jesus weird or something. I'm like, "Cool, nice to meet you." And he's like, I'm 2,000 years old, but people say I don't look a year over 1,000. Now, if my memory is correct, he was probably younger than I am now, or about my age right now. So he's not like an old man, despite what all my coworkers say. He was not an old man, but he so he starts making that joke, and he made some other, like, little punny jokes, and he's telling us about, you know, do unto others, and he's like quoting Jesus, and he's not coming over, he's not really bothering us, he's just talking to us, and we're like, okay, well, thank you, it's nice to meet you, and then we go on our way, and he doesn't bother us. And I'm at school the next day, and I say something. So I grew up in Marlborough, but I went to high school in Framingham, so but a lot of kids in my town went to Marion, which is in Framingham. So I'm talking to some kids at high school, and someone from Marlboro goes, "Oh, you met Marlboro Jesus?" And I was like, "You know Marlboro Jesus?" And he goes, "You know the ginger guy, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he's the redhead guy, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, he was redheaded." Yeah. He goes, "Yeah, yeah." He goes, "My mom went to high school with that guy. He's done a shitload of drugs, and he has completely fried his brain." And he goes, "But like, you'll just randomly see that guy around town, and like he'll just start talking to you." And he was like completely harmless as far as we all knew, never tried anything with anybody, but just would talk to you. And he would like, and I remember being like, because I was still a believer at the time, but I remember being like, honestly though, like if he was actually Jesus, like that's kind of how he would act, right? Like we would all think he was crazy, and I'm like, I don't believe him, but at the same time, like if Jesus is coming back, it could be that guy. Like it makes as much sense as anybody else, like he was not begging for money, he was not trying, he was just talking, he was being very friendly, and I remember being like, really, like, maybe that guy is Jesus.
That you could have given the test. There's one true test. Lead him over to a fig tree and see how he treats it. If he curses the tree, then it's Jesus.
Yeah. I really thought you were going to go water to wine, walking on water, which in Massachusetts is not that difficult to walk on water, depending on the time of the year.
Yeah. Same thing in New York. Yeah. You can walk across the Hudson. It's chunky.
Yeah. My dad and I, so, my dad's a non-believer that does not call himself an atheist. But him and I have had some discussions on a few occasions, and he goes, I think about a lot of that stuff that people say, and I just think, like, maybe they didn't know what ice was because it was the Middle East and it was like an unseasonable year. And he's like, there's a lot of real easy explanations for how Jesus could have walked on water.
The old joke where Jesus is walking on the water, and one of his disciples says, "Jesus, can I do that?" And he goes, "Yes, you can. Just follow in my footsteps." And he starts to walk, and he falls in the water, and he goes, "I said follow my footsteps. There are rocks there."
Nice. I haven't heard that one. It's a good one.
They don't tell that one around the church. Right?
No. Have you, I do have a good joke that I feel like I actually heard this. I can't remember who told me, but I feel like it could have been a priest. But
I know the guy was screwing me. I'm not sure who it was.
They were behind me and inside me at the same time, but no.
Came from here.
No, it came right here.
The joke. The joke.
All right, $10 patron is getting some stuff on that. So
he's gonna get it without the visuals.
Yeah, that's true.
He came from here. No, he came from here. No, he came from here. What about me, boss? What about me, boss?
So we okay, so the joke is this guy, this priest and this parishioner go golfing together. The priest hits the ball, goes wildly to the left where he didn't want it to go, and he goes, "Ah, shit, I missed." And the parishioner's like, "What the hell?" Like quietly to himself. And then they go to the next hole, and the priest hits it, and now it goes crazy to the right from where he wanted it to go. And he goes, "Oh shit, I missed." And the guy's like, "Oh, okay, this is weird." And then they go to the next hole, and he hits the ball, and he goes, "Oh shit, I missed." And the parishioner goes, "Father, should you be talking like this as a man of God?" And he goes, "No, we have an understanding." And a lightning bolt hits the parishioner, and God says, "Oh shit, I missed."
I could do we could do golf joke medley. I have so many golf jokes,
Nice.
especially religious ones. You know the one about the young guy, maybe 30s, and he's golfing with two older gentlemen, and they're going, and the one of the older guys hits the ball into a water hazard, and crap. He looks around and no one else is looking, so he walks over to the water, takes his golf club, raises it in the air, waves his hand, and the waters part. And he walks to the front, finds his ball, hits it out of the water, walks across. And then the younger guy hits the ball, and it goes in the water. And he's like, "Oh man!" And looks around, nobody's looking, and he just walks across the water. And when he gets to the spot where the ball is, it just floats up to the top, and he hits it and keeps going. And then the other old guy goes, hits the ball, it goes in the water, and a bass comes up and swallows it and is swimming away when a hawk comes down and grabs the bass and starts to fly off with it out over the golf course. And then an eagle comes and hits the hawk in the back, and the hawk drops the fish, and the fish falls and it hits the ground, and the ball pops out of its mouth and rolls down the hill into the hole, a hole in one. And the young guy who walks on water turns and says, "Dad, you're cheating again."
I was thinking it was going to be Muhammad. I'm like, I'm not familiar enough. I thought Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad. I thought that's where we were going with it. All right, that makes sense. That's a good one. So, I think that we should wrap it up. Do you have any last thoughts?
No.
Good.
I have no thoughts.
I didn't even do the research for this episode because I thought that would be in bad faith. So, all right. So before
there are times I don't do the research, like things like that, like Ayn Rand or whatever, because you know what? Even if it would change my mind, the current me does not want a future me that likes that.
Yeah.
I don't want to become a selfish pig. Not my.
Yeah.
Like you could tell me that, reading Atlas Shrugged will make you no longer have empathy for other people, and you'll be like me, a good libertarian who doesn't care what happens to anyone else. And I'm like, well, that's not an outcome that the current me wants. Yeah. So why would I risk? Maybe you're right. Maybe it would convince me, but I don't want that to happen. So I'm not even going to try.
I agree. And sometimes you look at it and you think like, okay, if they love to use the 2 + 2 = 4 or 2 + 2 = 5 reference, right? They use it all the time on the right. If there was a book that could convince me that 2 + 2 was 5, and you were like, you got to read this book, it'll finally tell you that 2 + 2 is 5, and you'll believe it. I feel the same way you just kind of described, but like, yeah, well, 2 + 2 is 4. I don't need to read that book and get convinced of something that, like, some of these things are self-evident. There are certain, like, it was actually a huge problem I had in college and in high school was anytime we had to write a research paper and I would put in like a line that was an opinion and a professor would be like, why do I care about your opinion? And I'm like, why does me quoting some other fucker like matter? Like, I get that there's backing your thought up, but like, why doesn't my opinion ever count? Like, there are certain things that are
the point of the paper wasn't for you to express your opinion, it was for you to learn how to do research.
Yeah, I guess.
The way to prove you did research is that you write the paper. That was their goal, is to make you do research. They didn't give a shit about your opinion.
Anyway.
That would be a philosophy class.
Anyway, I suppose that's true, but I just hate that like certain things are self-evident and we know that. And like, at work today, I had the argument about the sky being blue. Someone said, if I said the sky is blue, you would argue with me. And then another person said, well, technically it's not really blue. It's that it appears blue. And I was like, you're doing exactly the thing. But
like it wasn't blue. Was it in ancient Greece? It wasn't blue, right? That's the time that it wasn't blue, right?
I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
I don't know what this is a reference to.
No, that's not a joke. Maybe Google, make sure I'm right. Yeah, right. The sky and the sea weren't blue in ancient Greece. They didn't. So colors are kind of made up, right?
Yeah.
It's a spectrum of light, and we kind of chose. I'm calling this one red, this one green, this one yellow, blah blah blah. And there's some where we have, say, red and a real light red we call pink. But like we randomly decided that light red is pink, where light blue is light blue. It doesn't have a name, right?
Yeah.
It's the blue and light blue, but there was red and pink.
Yeah.
In ancient Greek, they didn't have a word for blue. It was a shade, like it was the color that came between green and red, somewhere in there, but they didn't have a name for that. It was like dark versions of it. So things like in the Odyssey and the Iliad, they'll call it like a blood red sky. and what they meant was blue, but that's how they described blue.
Yeah, nice. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I've never read the Odyssey or the Iliad.
because one of the things color is a kind of a made up thing. Like color exists.
Yeah.
There's frequencies of light, but we randomly chose the delineations of when we call it blue and when we call it indigo. Like somebody randomly chose that. It's not a inherent quality of color.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, we can give that one to the $10 patron who can learn about color. And,
I think he got enough this time. Well, we have two $10 patrons, but we should have a new $10 patron. And even though we shouted him out at the beginning of the episode, we'll shout him out again. Thank you to Alex, who is our new patron. I also want to mention if you want to learn about being a $10 patron or a $3 patron, you can go onto our Patreon, which is patreon.com/talking about the big stuff. The $3 patron option is also on iTunes. They call it a subscriber, but it's the same feed as the $3 patron feed on Patreon. So if you're on iTunes, that's an option. If you're on iTunes and you don't want to give us money, something that you could do that would be also really nice of you is to make sure that you are subscribed or following so that you're downloading each of our episodes. Give us a review, 5 stars if possible, and just say whatever you want about us. All of it helps. If you're not on iTunes, if you're listening on Spotify or Google or Alexa or whatever else you're listening on, make sure that you're subscribed and you're following and you're doing whatever that particular option has for likes and reviews and anything else, because it all helps us. And if you help us, we can make better content for you, and that's our goal here. Did I forget anything? Oh, the YouTube channel. If you're watching us on YouTube,
like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring the notification bell, ding, ding, ding.
Yes, and we have actually, because YouTube's the easiest to track. I can track like downloads on the other stuff, but I can't always track who's subscribed. So YouTube is the best thing where I can actually see subscribers. And since we've started asking for subscribers, we've been slowly ticking up a little bit. Obviously, I'm not censoring any of our episodes at all for YouTube, so like it's not really monetizable at this point, even if we made it to that level. But it's always nice to get a little more of an audience. So we appreciate all the help you give us, and we appreciate just the fact that you're listening to us. Matthew, you got anything?
Can I sum up? I just want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to us talking about the big stuff, even if you disagree with what we were saying and we're just looking to punch holes in it.
Yes. Was that a Princess Bride reference? I sum up.
I don't think so. No, not intentionally.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Let me explain.
No, there's no time. Let me sum up. So,
it may be one just because that's permanently in the back of my head, but it was not an intention.
We tried. So the other night we wanted to watch a movie with Logan, and we were like, "Okay, Logan, do you want to watch Princess Bride or Back to the Future?" And he was like, "Neither." And we're like, "Come on, pick one." So he finally picks Back to the Future, which but he picked Back to the Future. And he's like, "I don't really want to watch this though. I just picked it
because he's a big fan of Eric Stoltz."
Yeah. Yeah, because who else would be in that movie? But he, did you finally see Flash? I'm assuming
a while ago.
Oh yeah. So I'm trying to get him like interested in watching it because he picked it, but he only picked it because he had to pick one of the two. And I was like, okay,
lesser of two evils.
I was like, okay, buddy, here's the number one thing that you need to know about this movie that you're gonna love. And he goes, "What's that?" And I said, "The bad guy slams into the back of a truck full of shit and gets shit covered on him." Like, and I said, literal shit. And he was like, "Oh yes." He was so excited and he was so happy about it. And then he's like, "Is it really shit?" And I'm like, and they get to the scene. He gets to the scene and he's like, "Is it?" And then finally Goldie Wilson comes over and was like, and he goes, "It's shit." So
he has to learn what the word manure means.
Yeah. Well, I explained that to him, and he knew that. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Tom Wilson's song about all the questions people ask him.
Yeah.
And one of them is that real manure? No. Is that real manure? No. Is that real manure? It's a movie.
Yeah, I've heard the song. I heard, is Michael J. Fox nice? Yes.
Nice guy.
Yeah.
What's Michael J. Fox like? Nice guy.
Yeah.
Kristen Glover like, never talk to him.
Yeah. The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.